I don't know if you guys know this, but there is maybe some thought process that Israel isn't as united as a lot of people think. So let's talk about this Israeli lawmaker, and I'm going to let Dan Cohen talk about this because he has a little insight to what's going on. It says the Israeli lawmaker heralding genocide against the Palestinians, and this is Deputy Speaker. Let me make sure I say it right.
It's Smotrich.
That guy,
Smotrich.
Admiration for the biblical genocide. Joshua bin Nun leads him to adopt values that resemble those of the German SS. And this is Haaretz, right? And this is kind of like the Israeli CNN, correct?
It's like a big kind of liberal left-wing Israeli. It's kind of like the enlightened left of Israel, but, still Zionist.
So this is the guy Tomer Perisco quoted remarks that MK, Mr. Smotrich, made recently at a conference of religious Zionists where he presented his plan to offer the Palestinians three options: leave the territories, continue to live there with second-class status, or continue resisting, in which case the Israeli Defense Forces will know what to do. That's really chilling. These are chilling words that are liable to lead Israel into committing the horrific crime of genocide. One obviously can't expect Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu to do anything about this, but the real danger to Israel comes from the hundreds of, how do you say that again? Knesset?
Yeah.
Knesset.
Thank you. Members and public from the other parties, including the Likud, Yesatid, and even, thank you so much, and Zionist Union, who understand quite well where Smotrich and his colleagues are coming from, dragging the state, but are afraid to stand up from a united front with the Israeli left and tell the public the truth. This guy...
Smotrichism?
Yep. Like Hitlerism, Stalinism, and Maoism before them is an ideology that leads to the perpetration of genocide. If those who understand this don't rise up and eliminate this danger now, this will be the tragic end of the Palestinian people. But it will also be the end of the vision of a sovereign Jewish existence in Israel. So why don't you give us a little insight to what's going on? From what I understand is that there's this crazy, fanatical right-wing government inside of Israel right now. And they are hardcore right, where they just want to eliminate the Palestinians. We saw Naftali Bennett saying, "This is my enemy," when we're talking about Palestinian children. And there needs to be somewhat of a pushback. But that pushback doesn't seem to be coming. It seems like they're being a little bit quiet about what's going on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on? Because you also had mentioned that even worse than the Palestinian to a lot of Zionist Jews are people who are against Zionism. In other words, left-wing Jews inside Israel that are against Zionism are even looked to frowned upon even harder and harsher than the Palestinian. So what's going on in Israel that you're finding out right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot to say. First of all, Smotrichism is not a real thing. They're just talking about Zionism and maybe the real right wing of Zionism that is totally in power. And with what's going on right now in Gaza and the trauma in the Israeli psyche and society of the October 7th attacks, they're all completely lined up behind Netanyahu and Smotrich and these people. For the time being. To Kurt, when you were asking earlier, wait, aren't these people like mad at Netanyahu?
Yeah.
A lot of people are extremely mad. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They, see Netanyahu as responsible. I think now she's the transportation minister. She's a high-ranking, longtime politician longtime minister named Miri Regev. She was chased out of a hospital the other day by that. Kind of right-wing. Yeah, so I mean, they're really angry at the Israeli government. And when I asked, like, my Israeli cameraman friend who was hiding in his house when the attacks were going on, he's like, "Look, we're gonna deal with them afterwards, after this whole thing ends." So, but for now, they're basically just lined up behind them because it's like now it's killing time. So this whole idea that Smotrich presents it's not just Smotrich, it is the kind of right-wing everything to the right of Netanyahu. And since Netanyahu came to the fore on the waves of anti-Oslo, peace process sentiment in the mid-1990s, 1994, which of course killed Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, Netanyahu has always used the groups more to his right, even more fanatical than he is, in order to gain power.
Can I stop you for 1 second and ask a question? When you said anti-Oslo, are you talking about when Clinton and Rabin and Yasser Arafat agreed to give Yasser Arafat a two-state solution? That's what you're talking about when you say anti-Oslo, and that's why Netanyahu and his band of goons kind of got into power and were able to execute Rabin and move forward?
Exactly. Basically, what happened is the religious Zionists who believe, that God gave me this land, instead of like the more secular nationalists that like, this is my land and because I'm Jewish, even though I don't believe in God, they saw any rollback of so-called, Jewish sovereignty of land that they had conquered, occupied, the West Bank. In 1979, there were the Camp David Accords with Egypt, where they evacuated from the Sinai. All of those radicalized the Israeli public. The peace process radicalized the Israeli public to the point where they killed their own prime minister, to the point where they started launching terrorist attacks against the Al-Aqsa compound, where they repeatedly tried to destroy it following those Camp David Accords in 1979.
Yeah, that was Carter, by the way.
Yes, Carter oversaw that, exactly. And so the very concept of peace, of compromise with the Palestinians is completely antithetical. Yeah. It is heresy to them. And so anybody who engages in that should be assassinated, according to real hardcore
Smotrich, right?
And, right, according to the Smotriches of the world, and there are of Israel, in which there are many. He's not the only one. He's one of the more prominent figures. But this ideology that he's talking about, what he laid out in that 2017 plan, it's called the subjugation plan. And yeah, there are three options that you give the Palestinians. One, you leave, go to another country. Two, you agree you can stay as long as you live. They call it a second-class citizen in Haaretz because it's nice. They want to put it in nice liberal ways. Live as a slave. You renounce your religion. All churches, all mosques will be destroyed. That's all considered idol worship.
What?
And you live as a slave.
That's not even dhimmitude. Remember dhimmitude? We're going to be dhimmi to the Muslims. I think the Muslims let you pay a tax and keep your church.
Yeah. So this is Smotrich over here.
Better off.
This is ISIS.
He said it right here.
This is ISIS.
In this conference of Zionists right there, 3 plans right there. Leave the territories, continue to live there with second-class status, or continue resisting, in which case the IDF knows what to do to you. Kill you. Pretty much.
So they're putting it in these euphemistic terms, for liberals to consume. So what they're talking about is you get ethnically cleansed, expelled, you live as a slave, and you renounce your religion and everything, and you live under what are called the 7 Noahide laws. It's this like biblical laws for non-Jews in a Jewish kingdom. Yep.
They got their own Sharia?
And all of these. Oh yeah, the Noahide laws. Yeah.
So, but Dan, let's. All right, okay. So, but that is not everybody in Israel, right there. Not all, Jewish people that live in Israel feel that way. I mean, I remember, I have a lot of friends that don't they're not hardcore right-wing Zionists. They don't like Bibi Netanyahu. They don't agree with the treatment of Palestinians. One of my good friends, who's a Jewish guy from New York, who says the first thing we need to do right now is stop the bombing, get a ceasefire right away. This is wrong what they're doing to the Palestinians. So we have that kind of faction inside of Israel right now, right? Where I think those are a lot of the people you saw take to the streets who were protesting the Netanyahu government. So what's going on with their voices right now?
Okay, that anti-Netanyahu, all those big protest movements over the last months, they were not against the bombing of Gaza or the occupation of Gaza or the siege of Gaza or, they were just mad at Netanyahu because he did crimes inside Israeli society. He's extremely corrupt, and he was actually, investigated. He was indicted by, by courts for all kinds of crimes of, favors, all kinds of dirty things that, but those pale in comparison to the war crimes, the obvious things. So that kind of liberal camp exists, and they're not fundamentally they're not fundamental believers of this subjugation plan. But look, the third option is you leave, you renounce your religion and live like a slave, or you get killed. That is just a formalization of what already exists. Go, get out of here. I mean, that's a lot of Palestinians. They'll allow you to. They want you to leave, in fact, and they'll even literally pay you to leave. You can be basically a slave where you work in the Israeli economy. You don't have any rights. You are, as Haaretz described euphemistically, a second-class citizen. That's basically the Palestinians of the West Bank who make up large parts of the labor force in Israel and construct the settlements. Or if you resist, you get killed. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. So what Smotrich is doing, and this whole fanatical sect of religious Zionism that numerically is small, but is the vanguard, is leading the way, is now in power, in the key positions in the government, they've controlling the entire country through a well-crafted plan that began in the 1980s. They intentionally had a revolution basically within Israeli society. His plan, the subjugation plan, is just the formalization of the de facto reality that already exists for Palestinians. It's just now he's saying it out loud and taking it to kind of another level. That's really the difference. And not to say that he's not more dangerous. It's just, so it's like you have him, you have Smotrich, you have the other key figure is a guy named Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is the internal security minister. He is the head of all police in the country. This guy is a follower of Rabbi Meir Kahane, who's the kind of arch terrorist, born in Brooklyn, was an FBI informant early in his career, and he would inform on anti-Vietnam War protesters and would attack black neighborhoods in like Crown Heights in Brooklyn. He took his brand of kind of race, of hatred and racism to Israel and realized that you have to go to the masses. And he became a very popular rabbi and politician. He was elected to the Knesset. And then because he was such a threat to the Israeli establishment, he was banned. And he was not, his party was banned and called a terrorist group by Israel and the United States. One of the young guys then was Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is now the police, who heads all of the police. Just a couple of days ago, Itamar Ben-Gvir tweeted, maybe yesterday, he tweeted, "I've distributed thousands of weapons to the public." So what they want to do is carry out pogroms against the Palestinians of the West Bank, the Palestinians of Jerusalem, the Palestinians of inside Israel, and of course against left-wing Jews, liberals, anti-Zionists, wherever you fall. And so they have also now I want to say communications minister.
Wait a second. Wait a second. That sounds like civil war within Israel. Is that what you're saying right now?
This is exactly what I'm saying. So I'm kind of setting up the premise. So you have the communications minister who just proposed they're passing legislation that anybody who quote unquote undermines the national morale or promotes Hamas propaganda, which what does that even mean, can be arbitrarily imprisoned for 1 year on orders from Itamar Ben-Gvir, they
got their own Azov inside of Israel, almost like that. Anybody who's against them.
And then they have these militias on the ground. I mean, literal like terrorist militias that they've been raising. You have Lahava, which is a supposed anti-miscegenation group. You have other ones, and so they've distributed weapons to these people. I spoke to. I'm going to publish this on my outlet, Uncaptured Media, in a few minutes. I spoke to an Israeli member of Knesset, the only Jewish anti-Zionist member of Knesset, named Ofer Kassif, who his life is very much under threat, and he told me Israel is completely on the brink of civil war. What Itamar Ben-Gvir, what Bezalel Smotrich, what Benjamin Netanyahu are doing is preparing for to basically mass murder the Israeli left and Palestinians. So
how is that going to fly, though?
You have that.
Is that possible? I mean, I can't imagine that happening. Is that really, really possible?
I think it definitely is. You have to understand, the level of fascism coursing through Israeli society right now. I'll put it this way: there's a Telegram channel of Israelis that has about 80,000 subscribers, where all they do is post pictures from Gaza of dead Palestinians, mutilate the bloodiest, goriest images, and then they make jokes about it and laugh. That's all it is, okay? This is the completely Nazi mindset of a lot of Zionists. I mean, a lot of Israelis. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm not even saying a majority. But, when you have, I don't know, 10%, let's say 10%.
Yeah.
And you give all of them guns, what do you think they're going to do?
What Azov did?
And so exactly. I mean,
start tying people to
Ukrainian
poles and whipping them and
Azovite.
publicly flogging them and whatnot. I mean,
precisely.
I can't imagine a situation where you'll have Israelis killing other Israelis and the United States will let that fly. Well, this is hard to believe.
Well, I mean, Ofer Kassif he told me today, and you'll hear this in my interview with him, that he has been desperately trying to reach the progressive members of Congress, Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and has been, they've ignored him. They've given him the cold shoulder as he's been warning about this, that there was going to be some horrible explosion. And he's known this was going to happen, not that in a conspiratorial way, but he read the writing on the wall, the obvious. You have a complete fascist takeover. Israel is now a fascist state. They have legislation to lock anybody up they want. They're giving the militias guns. I mean, I think we are, just like Ukraine was back in 2014, that's essentially where we are. The war on the Donbass, where they were ethnically cleansing that area as best they could, that's Gaza. It's not a perfect one-to-one parallel. Arming of the Azovites, that is, the Kahanists, that ilk, the followers of Rabbi Meir Kahana. So we cannot underestimate the level of peril, not only for people in Gaza who are facing genocide, but also in Israeli society. Do not be surprised. I mean, what he told me is that, this is a member of Knesset. This is not just like some, kooky analyst. This is an elected official who is telling me the streets will be flowing with blood. It will be rivers of blood in the streets.
Yeah. Knesset is Bibi's party?
Not.
Or is it?
No, the
Congress.
Knesset is the parliament.
Oh, parliament.
Okay, my bad.
It's the parliament.
What party is this guy part of?
Likud.
Yeah. You said he's one of the only anti-Zionist members of the Knesset, right?
He's the only Jewish anti-Zionist member of the Knesset. His name is Ofer Kassif. He is he's part of the Hadash party, which is and he's the only Jewish member. So it's a primarily Arab party, and he's part of that. So he's a real anti-imperialist. He's been all over the place, all over Latin America. He's a real deal anti-imperialist, and he's that's what he's warning, and we have to take him very seriously.
Come see us doing live shows. We're going to be in Levittown, Red Bank, New Jersey, Wilmington, Delaware, Covina, California, Burbank, California, Oxnard, California, Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Nebraska, Des Moines, Iowa, Milwaukee, and Lansing, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.